everybody, and welcome back. I am very excited to meet with and talk to Ethan Nkana, who is here to tell us about the things he's learnt in helping physicians and clinicians about their clinical day. So welcome.
Hey, Sarah, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here with you.
Yeah, perfect. So tell us about you. What are you doing that's helping physicians or clinicians in this space about their clinical day and making it sustainable?
Before we hit record, we were kind of chatting a little bit about how we help doctors. And the way that we help doctors specifically is we work as a talent agent to help doctors negotiate better salaries in their contracts.
What were you noticing about physicians and their day that made you feel like they needed an agent?
There's not enough time, Sarah. Anybody who has listened to this podcast is like this to a friend or a colleague. There's just not enough time in the day. And then on top of that, if we want to get into the reality that our clinicians experience, it turns into, I need you to be busier. I need you to see more patients. On top of that, I need you to do all of your charting and all of that, which ends up getting pushed to when you're sitting at home on your kitchen table for many of the doctors that I work with. And so to me, there's this pressure for clinicians to do more with fewer and fewer resources, which if you do the math, that leads to burnout. And nobody's built to do more with less, but that's what we've asked. Think about the last 4 years. Think about the burden we've put on the healthcare system, on our clinicians. Have we honored them for that financially or otherwise?
So you are seeing that, well, I guess from your perspective, looking out, looking in at the physicians working, you're not seeing them being adequately reimbursed for the amount of hours that they're putting in as just step one of what you're noticing.
Exactly that. And usually that stems from a non-financial issue, which is you're asking me to see patients way too fast for me to do my job at a high level. I don't have the tools, resources, or supplies to do my job at the highest level. And then on top of that, access issues. I can't even get patients in for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks because of things that are outside of my control as a doctor. And so to your point, yes, the financial part tends to be a symptom, but really where clinicians are more frustrated, it's on the non-financial pieces of, I just want to be a good clinician. I just want to take the best care of my patients. I need the resources, staffing, support, supplies to do that. They're not asking for a whole lot. And you've probably seen, what do you see? I mean, do your clinicians feel like they have what they need to perform at the top of their license?
I was actually just listening to a podcast on diversity, equity, and inclusion today, and it was really awesome. And if I can find the name of the interviewers inside the podcast, it was fantastic. But they were talking about that piece of even just asking what do you need, and having that insight into how do we help level the playing field here in that what is it that you need, because each physician and clinician is going to come back to that question with a different answer, and many of them are not saying I need more money. They're actually saying, I want to be recognized for this work, or I want to be able to see my patients back in a more timely manner, or I want to be able to open a few more appointments in my schedule so that I can get back the critical patients, because right now I will just sack my after work to get them into that.
That is so well put. And it's unfortunate that the business of medicine has gotten to this point where we feel like clinicians are almost ancillary to the healthcare system. They're just cogs in the wheel that if you just plug them in, the healthcare system will run. And that's just not reality. As you mentioned, doctors are, no matter how many family medicine doctors I talk to, I've never talked to two who are identical, who have the same priorities in their practice or same goals for how they provide care. Every doctor is unique, and they deserve to be able to provide care at the highest level possible, because who benefits? Patients benefit. Patients benefit from happy doctors, and hospitals and employers know that.
Yeah. So if you were just looking at because you've probably got a better insight into what doctors are earning within the areas that you work, are you noticing differences within the different populations of doctors?
Absolutely. So you certainly see differences among specialties and even geographic regions around the U. It's the salary gap for women doctors and doctors of color. So just to call it out, there's a ton of data out there that doctors can Google, but I've aggregated a lot of it where you can see that women physicians, both generalists and specialists, are paid lower than their male counterparts for the same jobs, same work, same schedule, same, critical patient. And then likewise, doctors of color also earn less. And so one of the missions as a part of my business has been to educate doctors on how to prepare for success in your contract. So yes, we can help you and we're here for you. And we want doctors to know how to advocate for the best contract for their practice and ultimately for their patients.
Okay, so this would be a salaried position and they're being just offered less off the bat?
Yeah, there's actually a ton of data out there that shows. So if you look at the gender lines for a moment, if you look at generalists, women generalists make in the ballpark of 30 to 40, sometimes $50,000 less than their male counterparts. And then secondarily, specialists. So this is from a resource called Medscape, which publishes annual surveys of physician compensation where they aggregate all this data. Secondarily, when you look at specialists, those women are making about $96,000, so about 6 figures less than their male counterparts for the same work. Now, there's copious data out there also for people justifying those imbalances. Specifically, we're talking salary to salary, job to job. I see it all the time with doctors I negotiate for. The overwhelming majority of my clients are women, and we always end up getting them more money. Well, why is that? Because they're underpaid to begin with.
Very interesting. Is there anything that takes into account hours spent within that salary?
Yeah, there is. And there are people who would say that because women typically work fewer hours than men, that then in turn they should be paid less. But I don't agree with that. And the reason I don't agree is for 2 reasons. One, the data also shows that women spend more time with patients. And when you spend more time with patients, data shows you have better outcomes, you have better patient satisfaction. And the data also shows they do administrative things above and beyond just the clinical work. So yes, you can certainly account for hours, but this is looking job hour. Women are paid categorically less than men for the same work.
I think I was coming at it from almost the opposite. So if they were employed for the same number of hours and salaried, do we have any data about how long it takes men versus women to do that? Because I'm thinking that if there is a difference in women working in the evenings and weekends compared to men, but I haven't seen any data at this stage.
Interesting. Yeah, so I do think now Medscape would be the best resource for this. They show how many hours a week men work versus women work. Now, of course, these are what people report. Now, I don't know how that correlates to that disparity in pay. It's like, well, they're working more and being paid less. I don't know exactly what that math is. I haven't gone that far into the analysis. Because for me, the analysis begins with, why are my women doctors being paid so much less than their counterparts? And let's fix that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, so we're not absolutely not going to disagree on that part. I'm just noticing from my perspective the under earning that occurs because this 0.8 position is taking more than a 1.0 to complete.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't gone that far into the analysis, but I certainly think there could be some data to illustrate what that, kind of what that distinction is between what men work and women work and how that exacerbates that underpayment.
Yeah, and it may not even be a gender piece. It's just curious, isn't it? So more questions than perhaps that we could answer today, but that's okay. All right, let's move now into other things. So you now take this person who turns up and says, okay, I want to negotiate a new contract. Where do you start? What are you sort of looking at? What are you working with them on? What are the things we're thinking about when we're trying to put together a package, a contract?
We always start with the same thing, and that is what is important to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So much of a doctor's experience is dictated to them. Med school, residency, have this opportunity to say, hey, this is how I want to do things. And so we sit down with them and we always start with what matters to you. We rank 7 different things that doctors tend to express to us are important. And the top 3 things are always ranked as the most important. Flexibility and stability in my schedule. So a lot of doctors get burned out working call, extra hours, additional shifts. It's having free time for my personal ambitions outside of my practice. And then lastly, being fairly compensated. Now, those we rank differently for every doctor we talk with, but it's always those same top 3 of 7 things. And so we always start with what matters to you. And then we lean on the 15 years that we worked in hospitals and translate that into terms that your employer can understand.
So can we create more time in your schedule to be able to virtual care work? How are you getting acknowledged for the email message that kind of turned up inside COVID? I don't think it was unique in Canada, or maybe not the whole of Canada, but it was kind of new that this portal thing would occur because of the changes that had to be made to become virtual with our patients in COVID. A lot of innovation in the area of looking after patients, not necessarily eye to eye, face to face. But I think the US was doing this much longer because of the way that their EMRs were working and they had patients enrolled in these portals already. But I see a lot of burden of these. If there's less access, there's increasing volume of things coming in through these virtual portals. And some places are charging, some are not. Some are compensating physicians, some are not. Like, it is so different across the landscape because I hear all of the stories. And I'm so curious when I get pushback of, no, they'd never agree to that. Like, oh.
Interesting. Do your clinicians tell you that?
Yeah, physicians and clinicians are all. So whatever is set up is how it is. And some of them have, of course, and we bring some of those stories forward in here, come back to the employer and said, hey, where's the give and take here to have a little bit more wiggle room with some of their day-to-day routines and expectations. But a lot of them are like, this is just how it is.
Yeah, you bring up a really interesting point that I think a lot of doctors and clinicians in general would really relate to. When you think about any industry, technology is probably the best example. There's always new innovation and advancements. And the only industry I've worked in is healthcare, specifically hospitals. And it moves so slowly, even when you're doing the right thing for the patient. There's so many layers of bureaucracy and approvals that for clinicians to have agency, so much so that I've had people who I admire say,
Got it. Okay. How do you advocate for protected time? Tell me how that would look in a contract.
So the biggest thing that we talk about is clinical contact hours. So for clinicians, doctors, anybody who works with patients, you have kind of your HR schedule, which usually is on an FTE basis, which stands for full-time equivalent. That's usually 40 hours. Mm-hmm. For my doctors, we always talk about 2 primary components. One, your patient contact hours. How many hours are you actually supposed to be seeing patients in a week? And then on top of that, your call schedule. Call is one of the most, so after hours clinical work is one of the most common things that I get complaints about from doctors who say, I'm burned out. They're taking way too much. I'm doing way more than what we agreed to. and I don't have anything left. We put all the answers to the test on our socials for doctors and clinicians to find. So first and foremost, on Instagram, we are at Physician Agency. And then we also put a lot of our resources on LinkedIn. It's my first name and last name. Just this week, we are getting ready to launch our new brand YouTube page where we're going to have actual long form educational workshops on how doctors can negotiate contracts. So it'll be Physician Agent on YouTube as well, which will be the best place.